All right, so if you get a warning that says unbaked particle systems, it means that one or more particle systems in your blend file haven't been baked, and this can lead to problems. So that's why we give you a warning about this. So in this case, we only have one particle system. The name is particle settings, and the object that it's assigned to is called cube. So let's take a look at this. So this is the cube object. So if you select that and go into the particle properties, you can see the particle settings. That's the only particle system currently added to the cube. This is not baked, and the way we can see that is when we go into cache. You can see it's not baked because we're still able to bake, and it doesn't say anything that it's baked. So why is this a problem? Usually this is only a problem when the particles are moving, and in this case they are. So when we start to move the frames, you can see the particles start to move, and you can see this red line is becoming more opaque. And what this is doing is kind of like baking them, but just in the memory. So it's kind of like a temporary bake. And this works well. If we would render this without baking anything on our local computer, it would be fine because it will start at the first frame and it just goes to the next frame, and every next frame it will bake that next frame before it starts rendering, and it will be fine. But on a render farm, we use multiple computers to render your file to make it go faster. So maybe there are a bunch of computers rendering the first few frames, and then one computer just takes this file and starts rendering frame 80. So let's jump to frame 80, and as you can see, the particles go crazy, and this is not supposed to look like this. But when you don't bake it and you render it with Blendergrid, you might get this result. So the solution to that is baking, because when you bake in the locations and the rotations of all the particles for every frame, and you can choose what. I think by default it just uses the frame range, the start to the end. That's what it bakes. And yeah, when you do that, everything will be fine. And I recommend baking with the default settings. So especially this external toggle, I would keep that turned off, because if you turn it on, you will bake everything to external files, and that means you have to include those external files with the blend file. And that just makes things more complicated. So just using the default settings here, and I'm gonna hit bake, and it goes really fast. And now you can see this frame 80, where they would be going crazy before, now they look properly. And when we play through the timeline, everything looks well. And when we jump around frames, everything is working well because it's all baked. So when we now save this file and go back to Blendergrid, now I can upload this again, and now it will the blend file will be slightly larger because all this baked data is included in the blend file, but usually for particle systems this is very, very manageable. And now when we are checking this blend file, we don't see any warnings about this particle system. As with the one before, it has the same name, so it's a little bit confusing, but this is the one before. You see the warning, and this one with the baked one, it's solved.